So today's presentation, in honor of Suicide Prevention Month of September, we will present on suicide. And so it's titled, We Need to Talk About Suicide. Student Health and Wellness of Charles Drew University is putting on this presentation. And so we're going to go through some statistics first, and then we will go through some myths, debunking the myths, and then we'll go into resources and how to navigate conversations with individuals who are experiencing suicidality, or if you find that you yourself are experiencing suicidality, then this information and resources may be helpful. So suicide is the 11th leading cause of death in the U.S., and all of the research in which we're presenting has been pulled from the CDC. It's not from 2024 or 2023, but most of it is from 2022, which is the most recent information that they have provided. And specific to California, suicide is the second leading cause of death for individuals ages 25 to 34, and then the third leading cause of death for individuals 10 to 24. And this is really important to note because, one, we work on a college campus, and so we work with individuals primarily in this age range, adolescents, young adults, individuals in their 30s. And so it's really important for us to be aware about this as counselors, but then for students to be aware of it because they themselves or their peers may be experiencing this. And so at Shaw, Student Health and Wellness, we assess every student for suicide by using the Columbia Suicide Scale, and then we reassess as needed with the knowledge that individuals within this age population that we're primarily working with are really at risk of dying by suicide. And so just under 50,000 Americans died by suicide in 2022. And there is a possibility that this number is an underreport of underrepresentation of what the actual number is, but these are the statistics that we have. And so one life is one too many of individuals who die by suicide. There are 1.6 million people who attempted suicide in 2021, and this is down from 1.7. And so resources, numbers, 988 is the suicide hotline number. That number changed within the last few years, and so it made it easier for individuals to get connected with that hotline and the resources. And so we want to continue to bring this number down. Firearms are the leading means for suicide. So firearms are the main way in which people kill themselves. And so because it has high lethality rate. And then men die by suicide 3.85 times more than women. And research has indicated that this statistic right here is a fact because men use more violent means typically to kill themselves. And then women are more likely to seek mental health assistance, thereby potentially being one reason for this disparity in statistics. And so what we want to do as mental health professionals and then as medical professionals is to really note the statistic and to not allow society stigma, which is that, we really need to be strong and muster through challenges that we experience. We need to assess every single person that we are encountering in health settings for suicide. And so now we'll go over 9 myths about suicide and debunk them. And if you ever have any questions, you can put it in the chat and I will try to get to it at the end. So one myth is that suicide happens without warning. And the truth is that studies reveal that a person who is suicidal generally gives many clues and warnings regarding their suicidal intentions. And so what we need to do either as their support system or as their healthcare professional, is be alert to these cries for help, because that may prevent a suicide attempt. And so later on in the presentation, we'll look at what some of those clues may look like. But at Glimpse, it's, giving away prized possessions or giving away animals that they hold dear. Those could be some clues and warnings that there may be some suicidal intentions. Myth number 2 is that people who talk about suicide won't actually do it. They just want attention. And so when we look at the truth, we really need to take into consideration all threats of self-harm. We need to really take these seriously. It may be part of normal conversation with someone to, just have flippant phrases about not wanting to be alive or wanting to unalive ourselves. But we need to take these phrases and statements very seriously to protect those that we love or those that we interact with, or those that we encounter within the work setting. Myth number 3, if you ask a person about their suicidal intentions, you will encourage the person to kill themselves or give them the idea to do it. And this simply isn't true. The opposite actually is true. So when we ask someone directly about their suicidal feelings, that will often lower their anxiety and their concern. Lower their anxiety and your concern can actually act as a deterrent. I find this often to be true as an associate social worker providing counseling to the students, is that once the topic is broached, once I provide the Columbia Suicide Rating Scale, that it almost disarms individuals, that it provides them with comfort to be able to tell me about their thoughts. And so what I try to do is provide a very calm, welcoming environment, while also, really assessing and asking questions directly so that I am able to receive the proper information to provide them with the adequate and necessary care, and also for them to feel comfortable and allow me to have some insight into what's been going on. Myth number 4, once a person is seriously considering suicide, there's nothing you can do to stop them. Most suicide crises are time limited, so people attempting suicide are generally looking for a solution or an escape, and they aren't able to see any other options. One of the other myths, and further down in this presentation, we will come across the fact that with this time-limited crises, that it's a very heightened state of emotion and feeling as though there's no escape, as we see. But what we would want to do is debunk that this is a moment in time, and maybe it's been going on for a moment, for a while, but maintaining this heightened sense is very unlikely and very challenging to maintain. And so what we want to do is to look ahead. We want to look at options. We want to look at resources. Myth number 5, a person who attempts suicide will always be suicidal. Most people who are at risk feel suicidal for a brief, intense period in their life, but with caring support, resources, having and maintaining an adequate support system, the person can overcome these feelings. And so a support system can look like friends, family, a mental health professional, engaging in your faith, speaking with your pastor, and then also doing things for yourself, self-help, reading self-help books, allowing yourself to be vulnerable with those who care about you so that they can assist you through a time that's really intense, so that you can continue to live. Myth number 6, when a person shows signs of improvement, so i.e. they are in a better mood, they're out of danger. And what we see is that most suicides occur within 3 months after the onset of a period of improvement, when people have the energy to turn their suicidal thoughts and feelings into action. And so especially during this time, we need to be vigilant. So it's not to say that people will not improve and that once any improvement is shown, that then they will kill themselves. But what we do want to, be wary of throughout that specific time period and onwards is that there is a potential for someone to kill themselves because they're using that energy to put their plan into action. And so we just want to note this for ourselves, again, as healthcare professionals and as individuals who care for others. Myth number 7. Once a person has attempted suicide and survived, they will never try again. A previous suicide attempt is a critical and relevant predictor of future attempts. One question that we always ask is obtaining a history of any suicide attempts that someone has had. We want to understand what that looked like, what the means were, even if it's means that we know wouldn't cause someone to die. If they had the intent in killing themselves, then that was a suicide attempt. And so we want to take all history into consideration when working with someone, when reassessing, because again, it can be a predictor of future attempts. And I'll also note that we want to, if we can, and if the individual who has had a previous suicide attempt is aware of any triggers that led to, if there were any triggers present that led to the suicide attempt, or anything that may have led to this period of crisis in which they saw no other options than to kill themselves, so that we can be aware of that moving forward if something similar were to happen. Myth number 8. Suicide only happens to people with a severe or diagnosed mental illness. And I really want to emphasize that all types of people think about attempt and die by suicide. It doesn't matter their age, class, race, gender, or religion, and it also doesn't matter if they had a diagnosed or undiagnosed mental health illness or condition. It's possible for anyone to encounter this in their life. And so, again, we want to take all forms of statements, phrases, actions very seriously. We don't want to allow bias to interact with assessing for individuals. We want to take everything seriously. And you may note that the phrase die by suicide is now used instead of committed suicide. Committed suicide made it sound as though it were a crime. Die by suicide is now, a more proper term to use. Myth number 9. Individuals who attempt suicide are usually receiving psychiatric or medical care. Only about 10% of people who attempt suicide have received or are actively receiving mental health treatment. And so this is really important because going back to the previous myth, people who die by suicide or who attempt suicide may not have, a psychiatrist or a therapist. They may not have a diagnosed mental illness. And so there's, the myth that someone's usually receiving psychiatric or medical care, but again, it can truly happen to anyone. And so we want to keep this in mind moving forward. So now we'll look at signs and symptoms that someone is at risk of suicide. And as I mentioned earlier, giving away personal possessions, maybe talking as though they're never going to see you again. What we want to do is to be inquisitive about this in a calm and gentle manner, but still asking questions. And I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to look at this in a moment. But again, these are just warning signs that we want to take into consideration. They may begin to withdraw from activities that they used to find very pleasurable. Maybe basketball was their favorite sport. They would always go to the games. They would always play basketball in their free time. And now they're withdrawing from that activity. That's a warning sign. They may be tying up loose ends, changing their will or creating a will, or even increasing drug or alcohol use, which could be a way of numbing any sensations or feelings. There may be phrases like nothing matters anymore, or you'll be better off without me. And what we really want to do in those scenarios is to provide comfort and then ask questions directly about what's going on. So additional warning signs are talking or writing about death, maybe writing a suicide note, increased anxiety, agitation, challenges with sleep. Again, some of these signs overlap with other conditions, but to determine or rule out suicidality, we need to ask questions regarding suicidality. And so some other signs to look at are someone threatening to hurt or kill themselves, maybe feeling trapped as though there's no way out, so that escape that we talked about earlier. Feeling no reason for living, thinking that there's no way out of a bad situation. And so when we're approaching someone about this, we want to, again, speak in a calm, non-accusatory manner. We may have a lot going on inside, like, wow, I can't believe that someone has informed me that they are having these feelings. I never knew that this was going on. We may have so many questions inside, but what we want to do, again, is to remain calm. We can paddle really hard like a duck underneath the surface, but the way in which we want to present ourselves is calm so that the person who is experiencing these emotions doesn't escalate. If anything, we want to de-escalate the situation. We also want to try to understand how they feel from their point of view. And so we can encourage them to express their feelings, thereby allowing us to understand more of what they're feeling. And then through this, we can be empathetic and focus on concern for their well-being. We want to meet the individual where they're at. And so that means being present in the moment and just really allowing them to vocalize what they are experiencing and how they feel. We don't want to write it off. We want to, again, remain calm. Calm is the word of the day. We want to remain calm and encourage them to express themselves. And then we want to look forward because part of suicidality is, only part of it is looking backwards, this awful situation, what's happened, how can I get out of this? And the way that in which they believe getting out of it is to kill themselves. And so what we want to do is instill hope by thinking and looking at long-term plans or goals and letting them know, again, that this feeling won't last forever. And so we have 4 steps for suicide risk assessment. We're going to assess, we're going to ask the question, we're going to ask about planning, and then we're going to get immediate help if needed. And so we're going to follow this chart. So again, we're going to ask directly and in a calm manner. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Are you thinking about suicide? If they say yes, or if their tone changes that would indicate yes, then we will ask follow-up questions. Have you thought about how you would kill yourself? Have you decided when you would do it? Have you done anything to get the things that you need to kill yourself? So here we're assessing for a plan. We want to understand if they have gained means or access to means to kill themselves, such as a firearm, pills, any items needed for their plan to kill themselves. And one thing that I want to note is that sometimes when people are answering questions, they may say phrases such as not really. Not really to me means that there's a small percentage of yes. And so we want to right now read into everything that an individual is saying when we're assessing. So if someone says not really, I'm going to query into, is there a small part that means yes? And then asking further, inquiring further, while still remaining calm. If yes is answered to any of the questions, to any of those 3 questions, or to any questions that make you believe that they will carry out with killing themselves, then you want to call 911. You want to tell the dispatcher that that person is at risk for suicide, and you want to ask if a mental health crisis professional is available. If you aren't comfortable with 911, or if you would like to call 988, which is the National Suicide Hotline, then you can call them. what we'll see on the next slide is that we never want to leave someone who is suicidal alone, because that could open the door for them to possibly carry out their plan. And so I know that we're on a college campus. Let's say, for example, you have a final at 8 p.m. You're with someone who's suicidal, and you really don't want to miss your final. You would need to figure out a way to have someone else be with them. You all can create a plan, but again, you never want to leave that person alone. And so calling 911, taking them to the nearest emergency room, or contacting their therapist if you're aware of that person, so that they can come be with them. Here are additional resources to help. So again, we have the 988 National Suicide Lifeline. LA Department of Mental Health has a 24/7 helpline. You can also call 211 for local mental health resources. Again, you can contact their therapist, psychologist, or psychiatrist. And then California also has a 24/7 peer line. If you need any of these numbers, you can take a screenshot or you can email us afterwards, and we can provide you with these phone numbers and information. So we're nearing the end. Here are additional resources. Student health and wellness. You can email us at shaw@cdru.edu or call us at this number. Please don't use the email or the number in case of emergency. If there's a true emergency and it's after hours, then please call 911, 988, campus security, or take someone to the nearest emergency room. Our email does not act as an emergency line. You can call us during office hours, and if we're available, if we aren't in counseling sessions, then we will answer and provide you with assistance. You can also, again, contact 988. They have a longer number, but again, it was shortened to 988. And then you can also chat with them online at 988lifeline.org. And then the Trevor Project is for young LGBTQ plus individuals, and so you can text or call them. And then last resource is mental health first aid training. Student Health and Wellness provides this to all staff, students, and faculty for free. And so you can email us. If you have a group that wants to be trained, we just require a minimum of 5 individuals, and we can go up to 30 people. We do need advance notice, but again, we would love to work with anyone who would like mental health first aid training. It does go over suicidality as well as other concerns that individuals need to be trained in to be able to provide peers, strangers, or within the healthcare setting with assistance handling mental health first aid. Thank you all so much for joining. If there are any questions, we will stick around. But if not, you can contact us at shaw@cdru.edu. Thank you so much.